and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Today, joining me is an amazing special guest. He's a comedian. He hosts a bunch of amazing comedy shows for the Asian community. He's super wonderful. Give it up for Vong Show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, I've been wanting to have you on the show for so long. We finally made it happen, and we have made it happen on one of the busiest, if not the busiest day in what feels like an NBA history. We're recording this on the evening of Thursday, February 10th, post-trade deadline, just going through everything that's happened today. We're not going to have the chance to get into every single trade that happened because there was just too many. We won't be able to cover it all in this episode, but we'll cover all the major moves as well as the Raptors. So we're going to do NBA first and then Raptors. And usually, like, I thought we were going to have time to talk about like all-star reserves and like the all-star draft is happening tonight. Yeah. No, that is just going to have to all be for next week's episode. So without, further ado, we might as well get into it. No point in bearing the lead here. James Harden for Ben Simmons, the blockbuster. Wow. It finally happened. Finally happened. The Nets also get Andre Drummond and Seth Curry in this trade. And it's wild. I have so many thoughts, but Vong, I'll start with you. What are your initial thoughts on this trade?
Well, I am shocked. I didn't think this would happen until the offseason, but the way I look at it is somehow Daryl Morey was right, and he ended up getting James Harden for way less than he offered just last. Or I mean, it's such a world. I don't even remember when the last trade was for James Harden, but I guess it was like a year and a half ago. And wow. I really want to see how James Harden works with Joel Embiid, who of course is having an MVP season. I actually feel it's funny. It's so many thoughts. I'm just jumping everywhere. But with James Harden, I actually think like the basketball gods are kind of going to get him because I feel like he disrespected basketball by coming to training camp like fat a year and a half ago. And then he had the hamstring injury because of that, because he decided to just go out partying and get fat to force his trade. And then lo and behold, he gets injured right before their playoff run last year. And I guess he still has a hamstring. I don't know if it's really a hamstring or if it's, he also has a hand strain, which sounds a lot like hamstring. So I'm very confused. So I don't know if he's still injured or if he was just, quote unquote injured because he was trying to force his way out of Brooklyn. And, I don't know, that situation devolved so quickly. I thought it went from, Kyrie being a bit of a circus, to James Harden just wanting out, and within 2 weeks it just happened. I don't know, Cathryn. I'm in total shock.
Look, I'm with you. I did not actually think this deal was going to happen. I'm gonna put a little. I feel like every episode I have like a little conspiracy theory hat that I put on, and I'm gonna put it on now off the top. There's something about this that is just so convenient. And it almost makes me feel like Daryl Morey and James Harden knew this is how it was going to go down. I don't know if that qualifies as some sort of tampering or what, but there's just something about it that is just too cute for me. It's just too perfect. And I think Daryl Morey holding out in a way that is just so unprecedented. Like we've never seen a GM be like, you're not going to play then, I don't care, all this pressure from everywhere, not giving a shit, and then just being like in the final seconds getting this James Harden deal done. And then him, like you said, 2 weeks prior, suddenly he's not happy in Brooklyn. Suddenly he has a hamstring. I'm not saying he doesn't have a hamstring, but it's just the way this all came together is just a little too cute for me. And I think there were absolutely behind the scenes conversations that we are not privy to. And I think Daryl Morey must have known that he could pull this off to be able to pull off everything, the chaos that has existed around the 76ers since training camp.
Yeah, like I don't think that James Harden just magically decided he needed to leave right this instant. I think, I do think there was some tampering for sure. I feel like he started to act out, and obviously that game where he played 40 minutes and scored 4 points. I feel like all of that happened after he talked to Daryl Morey. Now, I don't think it was like, a year and a half in the planning. I do think
maybe not that long, but I mean, they've been in trade rumors with each other for a year and a half. Right? Like since James Harden wanted out of Houston, these two have been linked. I'm telling you, ESPN has been working on the 30 for 30 in real time. Okay, there's no way that there isn't some sort of assistant editor that's been assigned to this story in real time, packaging this together. These two are going to be linked in an NBA historical way for a long time. It's one of those trades.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. It's just so shocking. And with James Harden, oh my goodness. Honestly, in some ways, as much as I'm not a huge Harden fan, some ways I can't blame him. Like, I feel like with the whole Kyrie circus, like it's just, like, I don't know, man. Like, I might want to ask out of there too, but then to me, it makes Kevin Durant look real bad. Like, yo, KD, couldn't you have talked to Harden? Like, I don't think the GM could have done anything, or Steve Nash. This is like KD has to like lock down his team and be like, yo, dude, you ain't doing this to me.
You're absolutely right, and that's even more reason why there was a Daryl Morey pun in there, and I missed the opportunity, but, but that's even more so why I think that this has some deep rooted, I don't want to say conspiracy theory because I'm really not that kind of person, but like there's more going on in this scenario. That's what I mean when I say like it's too cute. Like I think sure, like James Harden wasn't happy. I wouldn't be happy with the Kyrie Irving situation either, but you don't just leave playing with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And I just think like, there's just so much more under the surface of it all, as well as you were mentioning this big three, so-called big three, only played a total of 16 games together. It is the shortest big three in NBA history. I don't think it'll ever be beat. Like 16 games. And then you're like, oh, this isn't working? It's crazy.
But, they showed flashes in those 16 games. That was, they looked super happy for like half of them. Like, and it just fell apart.
It's like a couple that elopes in Vegas and then gets annulled. You're like, they seemed happy for the first week.
Well, I'm gonna be. This is gonna be so mean because, like, but whatever. When I don't like somebody, I just really like dig into it. But like, I actually don't like Harden, Kyrie, or Durant. I'm a huge LeBron fan, so you could probably see where the Kyrie and KD hate comes from. But like Harden, I've always hated him for like his weird, crazy foul, trying to draw fouls and stuff. It's just so obnoxious. But honestly, I'm just kind of loving this whole thing. It's just so honestly, like y'all can totally ask my boyfriend, like when Kyrie was like, when the Nets said Kyrie couldn't play this year because they didn't want any like part-time players, I was so happy, like way happier than an adult man needs to be over somebody else's misery. But I was just so happy because like what LeBron had to put up with Kyrie, and then what KD, talking about karma. If anybody needs karma more than James Harden, it's KD for what he's done to basketball for the past 5 years. And
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
he if Kyrie is his karma, then he got everything that he deserved. Like it's just what everybody that I want bad things to happen to has been happening, because like this is totally outside of it, but the other person that I was like, what, I need some bad luck was like Kawhi, because he left us, and thank you for the championship. But, the following year when everybody basically said, Kawhi Leonard dragged a bunch of scrubs to a championship, but then, we ended up being just as good as his new team without him. I was feeling, so honestly, everything's going great. Unfortunately, obviously, I'm a LeBron fan, so the Lakers part isn't going great. But, the Raptors are going great, and at least if LeBron is having a bad year, everybody else I hate is also having a bad year. So, yeah. I know. People always say,
"Well, clap." But there was a lot happening there. I feel like we got out a lot emotionally.
Yeah,
it felt borderline therapeutic. But that was great. That was great. I mean, there's so much I could say there about Kevin Durant, about LeBron James, about the Lakers. But we'll try and keep it on topic a little bit. But I do love a tangent, so definitely not bad at it. I think I love the idea of just that Kevin Durant deserves bad karma for all he's done to the NBA for the last 5 years. That's going to stay with me for a while. That is so great. I mean, as far as this trade goes, I mean, I do think I actually, all the chaos and the circus aside, I do think this is a good trade. Probably for both teams. It'll be a long time before we truly know who, quote unquote, won the trade. But I think in the short term, this is a good move for both teams. Like, I think Ben Simmons needs to be in a situation where he doesn't have to be relied on offensively. And if that team is healthy, then he will not have to be relied on offensively. He can probably, Seth Curry's there, so he'll run the point. But I think Ben Simmons should run the point, honestly, and defend. I don't think he should honestly play like Marc Gasol with the Raptors. Like, don't even look at the basket. Like, just like you could have your back to the basket every play, and it's fine. We'll work around it.
Yeah, I think honestly, I actually like this better for Brooklyn than I do for Philadelphia. But I do think it could work out for both teams. But for Brooklyn, for sure, I'm a huge Ben Simmons fan. Obviously, maybe less so over the past year. But in general, I was really hyped about him coming in. I think he brings a lot to the table. Obviously, I haven't loved the fact that he was unwilling to shoot. But, having seen Russell Westbrook lately, I'm like, maybe it's better if people who can't shoot don't shoot. So maybe Ben Simmons was right all along. And I think this is honestly the perfect situation for Ben Simmons. Like, I always felt like either Brooklyn or Golden State, but Golden State, they already have Draymond Green. Here, they don't have anybody in his way. The only backup center is Andre Drummond, so he could basically play, point center for this team. And, because they haven't really been using centers all year anyway. And I think that's, I think it's going to be unstoppable outside of, karma Kyrie ruining everything by not being able to play.
This is why the Seth Curry addition to this trade is so significant, because he'll be able to help run the offense in Brooklyn when Kyrie isn't there. Although I do think, the other kernel to this is I think the Nets are banking on the state of New York lifting these restrictions as time goes on. Because, the way this pandemic has gone, it's like as the weather gets nicer, there's just less restrictions. That's how it's been on the East Coast. And so I think they're thinking that come playoff time, Kyrie is going to be able to play games in Brooklyn. But in the meantime, or as an insurance policy, if that's not the case, then at least they have a point guard of Seth Curry's caliber, which is better than nothing. Helping them at least facilitate the offense a bit there. So I think that's a significant part of this trade.
Yeah, and if they make it to the finals and play probably Golden State, like Seth Curry has done really well against his brother. Like he really, really gets up for those games. He's playing like his life depended on it every single time he plays Steph. It's a battle, and Steph usually wins the battle, but it's like close enough versus where it should be that. It makes it real interesting.
Yeah, and now like he's not gonna have his father-in-law as his coach, which could be huge. I don't know if that's a factor or not, but what a strange dynamic. I mean, that whole thing is just. I mean, not that we have to dive into it here, but where else are we going to? You know what I mean? God, it's so Freudian, that relationship that Doc Rivers' daughter marries Seth Curry. I can't get over it. Anyway, it's fine. You're right in terms of the Nets winning this trade, but my counter argument for it being a good trade on equal fronts is the 76ers, in my mind, were desperate to move on from this situation. They were desperate to move on from this situation, and if Daryl Morey's ego got in the way of wasting a year of Embiid's prime, I'm just going to call it that. Yeah. I'm going to use these harsh words because that's how strongly I feel about it. It would have been so hard to justify to the fan base that we're just going to let Simmons sit for a whole year. They were not going to get a player better than James Harden for this. So I think from that perspective, you got to consider it a bit of a win for the Sixers because, frankly, they were desperate and they got a very, very great player out of it. I think, I do think the Sixers are extremely fragile, though. Like Embiid is very injury prone. Harden recently has become more injury prone, and they don't have a ton of depth beyond those guys. I mean, like, I'm shocked Danny Green is still on this team. I thought they were going to try and move on from him. Like, it's just like those two have to be healthy and knowing how to play together, for the entire playoffs. And it's just, there's still a lot of big ifs around this team. And so I'm not completely sold on them. But it's something they had to do. They weren't going to get anything better. I do think that Morey and Harden were talking. I'm going to stand by that until I hear otherwise. And yeah, I think you have to consider it a win for them because they almost got absolutely nothing for Simmons this year.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's no way they could have stood pat and not done something on Embiid's MVP season, a very likely MVP season, and they were just heading for a first round, second round knockout. You just can't, big men in the playoffs. It's not like you can play a big man like 48 minutes, like what KD did last year or what LeBron's done in the past. I don't think you could do that with somebody who's like 7'2". It just doesn't work. And I just don't think Philadelphia had enough to really give it a shot. And with this year, everything's really wide open. I do agree with you. They did have to make this trade, and it's the best trade they could have made. So I think you're definitely right there. But yeah, I just really want to. If anything, it just makes it really interesting. I have no idea what's going to happen between Harden and Embiid. I do think that there's a chance this could completely blow up. But that's what makes it interesting because without this, it seemed like a foregone conclusion. Like, as a Raptors fan, I was like, before this trade, I was like, yes, let's get the Sixers in the first round, or let's get, you know what I mean? Like, I was not scared of the Sixers with Embiid alone. Like, I just wasn't.
No, I wasn't either. And when you really look back at it, that was the best iteration of that team
Yeah.
because they had Butler and he was massive. And the fact that they didn't keep Butler is just so crazy to me. But I think Butler wasn't happy there because he didn't feel like the other players had enough competitive drive, which frankly says a lot. I'd be looking at Butler being like, can you stay and just help them have that drive because we need you? But in any case, you mentioned earlier we were talking about karma.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's bad karma on both sides all around. Mm-hmm. And I'm not emotionally attached to either of these teams. But when you really think about it, karma needs to bite both these teams. Look, honestly, I think I like Embiid individually. I do. But everything else about the Sixers rubs me the wrong way. Everything about the Nets rubs me the wrong way. If the Sixers win, I mean, I've said it before, it would be so bad for the league because they're proving that tanking works. And I don't believe in tanking to the degree that they did. And I would hate to see that rewarded. And, even everything with the Nets, like, I don't want to see that necessarily rewarded either. If they didn't face off in the playoffs, what a tragedy that would be, right? Like, I mean, I tweeted, like, these two got to face off in the semifinals. Like, it just has to happen. If it didn't happen, it would be the equivalent of, like, Dwight Howard's Orlando Magic making the finals against the Lakers instead of LeBron James and the Cavs. You know what I mean? Like, it would be on that level of disappointing if we don't see this matchup in the playoffs. I'm super curious to see Ben Simmons. I think he's highly overrated as a player. I think he's criminally overrated throughout the history of his playing career. Maybe I will be wrong. I do think he is in a better environment to thrive just based on the way he plays. But we'll see. These two teams match up again March 10th, and it is in Philadelphia. So mark your calendars. It's the last regular season meeting between the two teams. It's in Philly. Call the National Guard, book some people. You know what I mean? Book the overtime now. You have the dates, Philly. You can't mess this up. Get. I don't know how it works in America. Get the army. You're gonna need a lot of security for this one. No, you can't do any. Maybe they don't do glass bottles, but obviously no bottles. Maybe even no plastic bottles. Honestly, they might have to just say straight up no food this game because it's all gonna end up on the court. Like all of it will end up on the court.
I feel like that game March 10 will show me a lot about Ben Simmons because I feel like 80% Ben Simmons ain't playing. I don't. Will it happen? I don't know. I don't see it.
Okay, you're onto something here, and I like it. I like what you're saying, but I'm not a Ben Simmons sympathizer, but he should play that game because he needs to get it over with. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to get it over with. If they face each other in the playoffs and, like, whether it's game 1 or game 3 ends up being your first encounter back to with that fan base, it'll be so much worse.
No, that's definitely true. I think he should play it.
But you're on to something there. He might decide not to, but I think he has to face them eventually, and he's still in the Eastern Conference. If he was in the Western Conference, then I'd be like, yeah, don't go to Philly again. But you're in the East, so it's like it's more games. I don't know. I think the playoff probability between these two teams is so high that I think he really should face that game.
Oh my goodness. I
don't know how I feel about watching it because it's like it's one of those things where I'm just like, sure, like I'm curious. Yes, I'm gonna tune in, but I feel like it's gonna be so vicious that it won't even be fun.
Yeah, the interesting thing and like an underreported part of this is that Ben Simmons opted in to get vaccinated to make this trade happen. So he had been
Oh,
unvaccinated for the longest time. And so once this started to ramp up, to make sure he could get traded, he got vaccinated. So, that'll be interesting to see how he feels about Kyrie because he had to make like a similar decision. I don't know. I
mm.
don't know.
That's an excellent point. I didn't actually know that. I just heard that he was vaccinated, but I didn't know that he was holding out this long. I don't who knows? I mean, it's possible that he's just not as political as Kyrie.
Mm.
Um but I don't know. I really don't know a lot about him as a person outside of basketball. And in terms of his mental health, people have debated it. I'm not going to say he's lying about that because it's just not,
Yeah.
unless I have some sort of evidence. I'm just not going to go there. I just don't think that's right.
Yeah.
Um so but hopefully, this fresh start, maybe he just decided like a fresh start was worth it for him, however he feels about the vaccine.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like I wonder if that will be a point of tension. I'm not sure. But I think
Yeah.
the Nets are doing everything they can to get Kyrie to just play a real 180 from their stance at the start of the season.
Yeah. No, I was really surprised when they backed off of their stance, but situations change, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it definitely makes sense with how many players they were missing due to COVID and stuff to get everybody available playing. But yeah, well, this makes Brooklyn extremely interesting, and then obviously I want to see how Katie comes back from yet another injury.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, every time he's come back from injury, been he's been KD. So it probably won't be any different this time. But
Yeah,
I
I
guess we'll
don't
see.
know. I don't know what in the sports science magic potion Kevin Durant has, but he has it and it works.
Hmm.
And happy for him from that standpoint. But yeah, it's going to be extremely intriguing. The level of intrigue that this gives the Eastern Conference is absolutely wild. With that, we spent literally almost half an hour on it. But it is such a massive story.
Oh,
There's a couple other trades we'll talk about before we get into the Raptors trading for Thaddeus Young. This happened a couple days ago, but it's very significant. We haven't had a chance to talk about it on the show yet. And that's the Portland Trailblazers
mm,
and the New Orleans Pelicans. It was a 7-player deal, which ended up with the Pelicans getting CJ McCollum, and then as well as Larry Nance Jr. and Tony Snell. The Trailblazers ended up getting Nikhil Alexander Walker and Tomas Satoransky and a player named Didi Luzada, who I can't say I know a lot about, but they ended up flipping those players to Utah today. So I'll start with this. I mean, first of all, I think this really marks the end of an era in Portland. Even though Dame Lillard is still technically there, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. I think they're going to finally deal with him in the off season. Um, I think it's a sad day for Portland fans. They really are not getting much back in return at all. They do still have Josh Hart, I believe, who's a decent rotational
yeah.
player, but clearly they're in rebuild mode right now. Um, a lot of people have been saying this, but I agree. I do think this was probably 2 years too late on their part. People have been screaming to make this trade for so long. They finally did it. I think one of the more intriguing parts of this is that the Pelicans are really going for it this year, even
Mm-hmm.
though Zion is still injured. And I'm really fascinated by the idea of the Pelicans going all out to play for the play-in. That is their best case scenario right now based on their record. And another conspiracy theory hat moment for me. I think David Griffin is doing this to save his job. I think if the Pelicans don't make the play-in, it's his job. And I think that's why he's making these moves with or without Zion being healthy this season. Because it's really odd that a team would go all out for not that high of a ceiling, at least for this season.
I am down with that line of thinking. I do think David Griffin is fighting for his job. Anytime we've seen a superstar and a GM or coach fight, the superstar usually wins. And it is no secret. I can't even call it an open secret because it's not even a secret. It's just open that those two hate each other, and you can't have the GM and the superstar actively fighting, in open media, and the superstar's family getting in on it. It's just way too much drama for a city like New Orleans. Now with CJ McCollum going there, it's interesting because I think CJ completely proved he is not good enough to be the number 2. But they have Zion when he comes back, and they have Brandon Ingram. Can he be a number 3? I think that is an interesting question. My worry, though, is with New Orleans, they've really sucked on defense since Zion's been there, and that includes Zion, which is strange because Zion was actually pretty good on defense in college. But they've been near the bottom of the league in defense for almost the entire time that Zion's been there. And I feel like the league has given the Pelicans every advantage to have a good past 3 years. They keep scheduling them on Christmas, keep scheduling them, first game of the year. There's a lot of ways where you could say that the play-in tournament and the bubble, the way it was designed, was completely
1,000%.
made for Zion Williamson and the Pelicans. Literally, the league has wanted them to succeed. And they're still totally awful, even though they're being given every advantage. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what's happening with Zion. I don't know what's going on with this team. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like David Griffin sort of signed his death warrant when he hired Stan Van Gundy, of all people, and then quickly replaced him. And now, of all the names, where I feel like coaching Zion Williamson is something that people would want to do, and the best you could get was Stan Van. I don't know. At that point, I think that's when Zion lost all faith in him, and probably rightfully so. And then, here we are. But yeah, I don't know. And on the Blazers side, I would feel better about it for them if they actually were rebuilding, but they're saying, quote unquote, saying that they're reloading, not rebuilding, because now they have enough cap space to, quote unquote, sign 2 max players in the offseason. And that's their plan, because they wiped out $70 million. And I was like, what 2 max players? Is Damian Lillard? Hey, maybe this is just their way of telling Damian Lillard, listen, you got to go recruit, and if you don't, then it's not our fault. We got the cap space. Because
maybe.
Because with Portland, the other underreported thing too is this summer, Damian Lillard, even though I think he's still got 2, maybe 3 years left on his contract, he is eligible for a max extension of another 2 years that would take him into his 36-year-old age at 50 something million, almost up to 60 million. And a lot of people were thinking that Portland does not want to pay him that almost 60 million when he's 36. And he was basically saying, this was reported back in December. He was basically saying no, I'm Damian Lillard. You need to give me that extension now, even though I have 2 years left on my contract. So I don't know. One way or another, it's going to get solved this summer, because if they don't offer him that extension, then I feel like they have to trade him.
Well, maybe they're giving him, maybe they cleared that cap space just for Lillard. I mean, Nurkic is also an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, which is interesting. I don't think he stays. Um, yeah, the weird thing about Portland not being able to attract free agents is that it's not a terrible city.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's a nice place. It's not like
Yeah.
a shithole of a town. You know what I mean? It's not even like that particularly cold.
Yeah.
It's on the West Coast. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just it feels weird to me that Portland wouldn't be able to attract a free agent, especially when they have a player like Lillard.
Mm-hmm.
I think, once they got rid of Neil O'Shea after that whole controversy, I felt the writing was on the wall that they were going to have a rebuild, because usually once you have a new front office, they want it to be their people in this, that, and the other. So I wasn't entirely surprised, although I was kind of like, I guess, a little sad for Blazers fans that they didn't get a lot in return, because this could have been a better retooling situation than it is. But I mean, they're at least tanking for the rest of this season, which I think is smart. But I think they're going to have a very interesting offseason.
Yeah, this Blazers team, I don't know. Yeah, like you said, they should be able to attract people. It's the headquarter of Nike. It's also it's a strangely diverse city. Most people don't know this, but it's like the second highest percentage of LGBTQ population in America, behind San Francisco, which I was not aware of until recently. So it's a nice city, and any city with the gays, there's going to be lots of partying and stuff. So. Listen, gays do not go to a boring city, so that tells me all I need to know about Portland. It's got to have some type of nightlife.
What we're really saying is they need a WNBA team. That's what we're really saying. But yeah, I hear you. I just yeah, all the more reason why it's like, why Portland haven't you been able to recruit anybody? Like, you think a lot of people would want to play with Damian Lillard no matter where he was. But it is what it is. It is the end, whether they accept it or not. It would be kind of tragic to roll out next year with Lillard and significantly, no disrespect, worse role players than what they had. That just doesn't make sense. So I think they're going to work on an off-season deal. I think Damian Lillard will be involved in those conversations. I think it'll be something that he wants that will hopefully suit both parties. But I do think that that's kind of where this is headed.
Now, one thing I'm wondering about Portland, and specifically about Damian Lillard, is he was having like an atrociously awful year, shooting, scoring. This is his worst year probably since his rookie year. And what I'm trying to figure out is it because of the injury? He is out for the season after having surgery and shutting down, or is he just he's on the wrong side of 30? And he's not the biggest player in the world. We have seen people sort of slow down. I'm not sure I would be building around Dame Lillard. I don't know if this was a 1-year blip or if this is the new, Dame Lillard who, I don't know.
I mean, that's also part of it, right? I mean, that's another reason why I think Portland needs to move on. You're right in terms of like, it definitely doesn't help his trade value, and he does have such a large contract. Like, who is going to take him on? I don't know. I do think that somebody would take a gamble, depending. I don't know who. Like, it's not coming to mind, but I do think if they put it out there, okay, like this is happening, we're going to trade Damian Lillard, someone will bite. Someone will still bite. I think his reputation's too great that he's earned it. Again, I don't know who, but it could be, the prime Damian Lillard years could be over for sure. Okay, let's move. Sorry, I think my computer froze for a second there. It's all good. Okay, let's move on. I got to talk about the Pacers Kings. Lord. This was also another oh my god deal that happened not today. I guess it happened yesterday. So the Indiana Pacers from the Sacramento Kings get Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield and Tristan Thompson. And the Sacramento Kings get Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, and Justin Holiday, and a 2027 second round pick. Now, a lot of people are having a hard time making sense of this trade. Why would you trade Tyrese Halliburton? I mean, it would be like the Raptors trading Scotty Barnes. I tried. We actually delayed the recording of this podcast. I tried to find a take that, oh, this is why Sacramento would do this. I did not find one. I was trying to understand this from their perspective. I absolutely don't. Tyrese Halliburton is only 21 years old. He has a lot of promise. Sacramento has been in a rebuilding phase for a really long time, frankly, ever since they got rid of DeMarcus Cousins, which was in 2017. I saw a Kings fan online saying, burn it down, which made me laugh so hard because I'm like, it's been burnt. Like, that's like looking at that's a 5-year tire fire, like a 5-year straight tire fire, and then being like, you know what? I think we should burn this down. Like, I just don't understand this from the Kings' perspective at all. Vong, do you have anything to say for them?
I think, obviously I'm in agreement with you. This was a horrible trade for the Kings, and I think almost everybody in the NBA was shocked by it, including the other GMs who felt like, wow, we could have beaten that trade offer. So they didn't even do their due diligence to get the best return on Tyrese Halliburton because they were so adamant that he was untouchable when Philadelphia wanted to trade Ben Simmons for him, that everybody just assumed that just meant he was untouchable flat out. But apparently untouchable means, unless you got Sabonis. Because, I don't know, maybe, okay, here's a take. Portland legend Arvydas Sabonis, now, oh no, wait, that's not even Portland, that's Sacramento. I'm getting so confused. There's so many trades. But I was like,
Vlade Divac?
Oh yes, Vlade Divac. No, I was trying to make this thing. I'm so confused with this whole trade that I'm not even thinking clearly because I was like, oh, maybe his dad played for them and now they're trying to relive it. Maybe it's a good PR move, but no, I got the teams wrong. But one thing I can say is, okay, listen, they did have 3
that would
young
actually
guards.
make some sense though.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it just really doesn't. But the only thing I can think of is, okay, so they have 3 young guards, 3 great young guards, De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell, and Tyrese Halliburton. Like, clearly, I feel like they were trying to move Fox because they had made the decision that those 3, though they could coexist, it would take too much of... it's unbalanced, right? They want like 2 young prospect guards instead of 3, when they have to eventually pay them all, they'd rather have somebody who's like a forward. So I get that. Now they are more balanced. Now they have like 2 young guards and a forward, which does balance it out. And I think maybe they just weren't getting enough offers for De'Aaron Fox that they're like, okay, if we want any type of return, we're going to have to move Halliburton. But even if that's your decision, like, do your due diligence. Like, you could have gone more than Sabonis if you wanted like a forward. And I actually think that Sabonis is pretty good, 2-time All-Star, whatever. But like Tyrese Halliburton, it's like what you're saying with the Raptors and Scotty Barnes. It's like it would have to be something astronomical. And Sabonis, I like him. I was hoping that the Raptors would trade for him, but wow, Halliburton.
Yeah, I mean,
Oof.
look, Sabonis is a good player, but he isn't. How can I put this? We know that he isn't a franchise player, and with Halliburton, there is still potential that he could be a franchise player. And when you look at where the Kings are at, it's like, why are you trading away such potential for someone you know isn't actually a franchise guy? Like, I don't know if it's because, like you said, Sabonis is a two-time All-Star, but let's be real. He's a two-time Eastern Conference All-Star, which is not the same. Like, I don't know. Like, I really don't think that whoever is running the Kings actually truly knows basketball. These are not basketball moves. Like, this is not even with all the draft picks, it's like year after year, it's a guard. Like, why are you constantly drafting guards? Like, it's just, these are not basketball moves. Sabonis is an Eastern Conference only All-Star. And it is baffling. And I think it says a lot about sports. It says a lot about men, frankly, that people even still go to Kings games. Like, I don't even know how people still go to these games. Like if the Raptors were in a state like that for 5 years in a row, like, I'd be out. I would be out. I would follow the NBA. I would maybe just kind of keep a little bit of an eye on what was going on, but no way am I tuning into every game, this, that, and the other. Like, I just, no, you don't deserve my money at that point.
Yeah, it's such a crazy comparison too, because like right now the Raptors are in a post-championship rebuild. Like, this is our like worst years that we have to quote unquote suffer through, and it's a great year still. Like, I couldn't imagine, like, if this is our suffering, this is, I'm okay with it. It's still exciting. We're reloading, and I like our young players. If it was just like, I don't know. I'll be totally honest though. Like, I know a lot of the, basketball geeks, the numbers people really love Halliburton. I can't say because he's on the Kings. I haven't really seen him. I looked up some of his numbers. They're very promising. I think number 2 in the league for percentage in of unassisted 3-pointers, which is a really huge thing as a primary ball handler, because as we've seen with Steph Curry and with Van Vliet, who I think is, Van Vliet's also top 5 in that category. It just really spaces the floor, because if your lead ball handler has such a high percentage just off the dribble on threes, like, it's really hard to guard that team. But I can't say I've personally seen a lot of his games. But I will say the other thing too is, like, he actually wanted to be in Sacramento somehow. I don't know why. I don't know if he's from there, but there was something that I remember during the draft. People said part of the reason why he fell is that he might have tanked some of his workouts because he wanted to go to Sacramento so bad, which is strangely shocking. And since he's been in Sacramento, he keeps talking about he wants to be part of the rebuild. He's in here for the long haul. So you've got this like you said, Cathryn, like this tire fire of a franchise, and you have this young potential franchise player who actually wants to be there. And that's the one I don't understand. It
honestly sounds like he has a bit of a savior complex. And the thing he wanted to save was not down for being saved. Like, that kind of a dynamic to it. Yeah, I mean, it's sad for Sacramento. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like, I haven't tuned into a ton of their games. As far as I'm concerned, they have not been relevant since the Chris Webber years. And like, when you look at franchises that like really haven't been able to do well or get anything off the ground in a long time, Sacramento, it might be the worst. Because I mean, even the Timberwolves have had flashes of hope. This year is going, better than a lot of other years have. They have had small moments in the playoffs. Same with the Wizards. Like, a lot of these teams, and the Kings, it's just like, I just don't even know what to say.
No, when you talk about karma, if there's one team that I actually would wish would get some good luck, strangely, it'd be the Sacramento Kings, because, not to get too off topic, but like, I was a huge fan also of the Chris Webber years. Mike Bibby, all that stuff. And that year where to me, they're going to win the championship. And in that fourth quarter where they got so screwed by the refs that I literally told everybody I was watching the game with that these refs have been paid off. And nobody believed me. And then what was it, like 15 years later? Guess what? The ref for that game is the one that got kicked out of the league for being dirty. And I was like, anybody who watched that game knows what happened. So that team deserves some luck because they deserved a championship.
It's so true. People do not revisit that game enough from the point of view of a Kings fan. Because I bet Kings fans have had to defend the shit out of that playoff series and out of that team for so long, and then they haven't had anything else. That's got to be hard.
I think the Lakers had something like 17 free throws in one quarter because they were down by double digits. And I don't want to revisit the whole thing, but I think it was just so sad. And then Chris Webber was denied like the Hall of Fame in like his first 4 attempts or some shit, where he should have been a first ballot. The whole thing's ridiculous. Please, King, stop doing this to yourself. I don't know. Y'all deserve some good luck, but you aren't getting it. And this one's self-inflicted. So when you already have bad luck and then you're self-inflicting more, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, well, that's very well said. That is very well said. And maybe one day someone will work there. Someone will have a savior complex who wants a front office job that has actually watched basketball for the last 20 years and knows what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, there's one last thing that I feel like we got to mention before we get into the Raptors. The Washington Wizards, they've got Porzingis. They've lost Harrell. He goes to the Hornets. Bradley Beal has had season-ending surgery, and he is actually a free agent at the end of this year, but he has a player option, and so that changes that dynamic. It does look like they are tanking for the remainder of this year, but what is going on with this team?
I have no idea. They must be really, really confident that Bradley Beal isn't going to sign somewhere else this summer, or that he's guaranteed. Because I don't know how you don't move off of Bradley Beal without a guarantee. Because just imagine if Bradley Beal walks. Like, wow. I don't understand. Unless they just think, Supermax, that is a lot of money. Bradley Beal's not one of those, like, he's great. He's a superstar, but he's not like, a KD LeBron where you're never going to regret the super duper max, So maybe they just feel like it's so much money he's never going to walk away. But, Porzingis, Beal, okay. And you know what? I will give them credit. They got off of that John Wall contract by somehow, they really turned that into assets.
First they got off the John Wall contract, and then they got off the Westbrook contract.
Mm-hmm. And instead of having to give up a whole bunch of stuff, they fleeced the Lakers into giving them stuff for taking. So I feel like they're not totally incompetent. And, Montrezl Harrell, apparently he's having more issues in the locker room for a third straight team. So I don't think that's like a huge loss. Yeah, he's been unplayable in the playoffs for his last 2 teams as well. So I think, getting any value from him is not bad at all. I don't know. And I actually like Porzingis. He's another person that I was hoping that that the Raptors would go after. So I don't hate it. The only thing I hate for them is, you're doing all this stuff. You better be sure Bradley Beal is opting in or re-signing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I'm so confused because I'm like, why do you want Bradley Beal to opt in and sign this deal? Right? Like, you've tried to build a real team around this guy for a long time. And it hasn't worked out. X, Y, and Z, many reasons why it hasn't worked out. I wouldn't say it's any one person's fault. But as great as Bradley Beal is, I just don't think you're going to build a team around him. Like, they've had a lot of opportunities. They've had a lot of assets to move around. I just think like I'm just not convinced. Like to me, this situation is similar to the Portland Trail Blazers situation, but not nearly as tragic because at least the Blazers had some playoff success. Like to me, the Blazers, it's like it's sad that it's being torn down, and I'll think fondly of that team the way I think fondly of like the Memphis Grizzlies when they had Zebo and Gasol and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't call it a failure even though they didn't win a championship. But with the Wizards, you know, since the year they swept the Raptors, which is a moment in time I really do like to forget, they have not had any real success at all. And it's just, it is time. It is time. And I could see Bradley Beal opting into this player option for the money and just forcing this team to be stuck in a mediocre situation for longer. Like I don't see a real way out of it for them, but it's weird. And I felt like it was worth mentioning. It's confusing. They're definitely tanking for the rest of this season, which I think is smart. And, I think a lot of this trade deadline was people deciding, you know, from the Harden Simmons situation aside, was a lot of people coming to the realization that they are not a contender this year and that they shouldn't try. That is my overall general take.
Yeah, no, you know, just a small note on the other side of that deal. I think this is pretty good for Dallas if Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans.
I forgot to mention Dinwiddie and the whole him going to an NFT art gallery, whatever that even means, with Mark Cuban. Have you heard this?
No, I hadn't.
They were socializing at an NFT art gallery. I'm not that old. I age myself every episode. And I don't even know what an NFT art gallery really is. And when they say they're socializing, is this in person? Is it like you know, like you go to like those Zoom conferences and then they have those like breakout rooms? And then they like put you virtually at a table with other people you've never met, and you're trying to pretend it isn't the most awkward thing in the world. Like, what is this?
I honestly, I'm not sure. I don't really understand the world of NFTs, which is funny because I actually have quite a bit of understanding on cryptocurrency and blockchain, but then because that's when I sort of left my corporate job was when the technology was getting to that area. But then NFTs sort of started after that, and it was using the same technology, but I was no longer being paid to keep up to date on it. So I don't totally understand what the hype is outside of creating like artificial scarcity in a digital world where scarcity usually doesn't exist because it's digital. But outside of that, I think it's just crazy people throwing money at things that don't exist. Like, I don't know, y'all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like anyway, it's just, so some of the values these things are going for, it's just insanity.
I do think this is a good move for Dallas. They've been wanting to move off of Porzingis for a long time. I'm not high on him like you are. I would not want to see him on the Raptors at all. I mean, for personal reasons, but even just basketball reasons, like I don't want to bet on that guy. You know what I mean? Like I love betting on Fred. I'm not betting on Porzingis. I'm not rolling the dice with that guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not. Dinwiddie is I think will be good for Dallas. I do think that move makes them better. I just are there photos? Could photos even exist? Is it a screenshot? Like, I just don't even know if this is an in-person or virtual event. And I don't know to the degree that they could even socialize. at this event. I want to know more about the event.
An NFT gallery.
I'm so obsessed with it. But yeah, I completely forgot to mention that. So thank you, Vong, for bringing it up.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll look up this NFT gallery thing. That sounds wild.
Amazing. Okay, now it's time finally for our Raptors Homer Moment. Thank you for sticking with us on a longer than usual episode, but again, just so much to get into. So we've got Thaddeus Young for Goran Dragic plus a pick. How do you feel about this trade, Vong?
I was, it was sort of bad because I was up all night because there were like some breaking trade rumors. I know. Listen, I take basketball way too seriously. There's times where the result of a game didn't go my way and I had to take 2 weeks off of work because I just couldn't deal. So,
oh my gosh, what was that game? 2 weeks.
It was.
Was it the blowout against? Was it the blowout against the Wizards?
Yeah, it was the I called game. I was it was the you mentioned it before, the when we got swept. It was too much. Yeah, I was like, no, yeah. I'm over it. I'm taking vacation early. I just can't deal with this right now. Okay, so anyway, on that background, so I was up all night because there was some breaking news. There was a proposed trade with the Raptors and the Lakers and the Knicks. And I was like, okay, good. Anything involving like the Knicks and currently the Lakers and Masai Ujiri. Masai totally going to fleece these people, right? And so we were going to get Nerlens Noel and Talen Horton-Tucker, who we had wanted last year for Kyle Lowry, and who's having a bad year with the Lakers. But Masai Ujiri is smart enough to know that Talen Horton-Tucker was shooting over 40% from three-point land this year until he like strained a ligament in his finger. So he's a distressed asset that I feel like Masai Ujiri was going to go in and steal. And Nerlens Noel also solves our big man problem and is still fairly young. So with that in the back of my mind, when I saw that fell through and instead we got Thaddeus Young, who I remember liking as a 76er 8 years ago and haven't heard from since. I was like, what is going on? Thaddeus Young was in like buyout rumors last week. I was like, so we traded a first rounder to get somebody who is probably going to get bought out. I was like, oh my goodness, and it's not that bad because we more swapped picks than just gave up a pick, because we are getting a second rounder from Detroit, and that's likely to be the first or second pick in the second round. So basically what we did was we moved down like 15 spots or whatever, or 10 spots. So it's not the end of the world, but I don't totally get it. I know we needed a big because Khem Birch has been injured all year, and like, Nick Nurse, and I know you love Nick Nurse. I like Nick Nurse too. Maybe not in the same way, but Nick Nurse, but like he's been playing our guys like 40 minutes. We have 3 of the top 5 most minutes played people in the entire league, and I get it. Let's get another big, throw him out there, at least reduce some minutes. But I ain't giving up a first rounder to do that. I honestly do not understand this at all. Just like Goran Dragic's stupid contract run out and use the cap space. I don't really understand.
Yeah, I think I completely hear you on all your points. I'm trying to justify it in my mind, and I think what they're going for here, and like you said, yeah, like throw him out there, let's reduce some minutes. We need another big, except he's also 6'9", like everybody else. I think what this is for is actually to have hopefully a veteran presence, a mentorship like presence for Precious Achiuwa. That is what I think this is about. I could be wrong, but that's what I think this is about. I think we have such a short rotation right now. I mean, it's 6-7 players at best. We really need an 8-man rotation to be able to really thrive in a playoff series. And right now we're the 6th seed. So I think they're looking at that being like, we're going to need more than a 6-man rotation. And when the game is on the line and it's a playoffs, do we want Precious Achiuwa out there? I don't think we do. I think the whole Lowry thing was never about Dragic. It was always about Precious. I think they still believe in him. I think he is taking maybe a little longer to develop than they had hoped. I'm not entirely sure what they felt his timeline was. I still like Achiuwa, but he is extremely inconsistent. And I think they're like, if we're going to be in a playoff series, we're going to need somebody at that spot that's more reliable. And I think that's what Thaddeus Young is going to give us, again, at least in the short term. And, you know, you talk about the picks. It's good that it's Detroit's second rounder, but at the same time, it's like so many teams have now decided they're going to bottom out this year that we actually don't know if it will be the first pick in the second round or not either. That's the other risky thing about this. Like, the Wizards have decided to bottom out. The Pacers are deciding to bottom out. So we don't really know where that pick is going to end up. So it is risky, but I think this is them doubling down on their investment in Achiuwa and giving us somebody in that 5 spot that's a little more consistent than Achiuwa or even Boucher. But I think the fact that we've been able to improve our bench without giving up Boucher is good. I will give it that.
Yeah, I think, I was hoping we could package Dragic with something that we didn't need, like Malachi Flynn or something, to get an asset back. I really didn't want to give up a first rounder or Boucher or whatever, because I just feel like we're just growing. We're not on a timeline where we need to be giving up assets, especially because Masai Ujiri is such a good drafter that, a mid to late first rounder in other people's hands might be nothing, but in Masai Ujiri's hands could be Pascal Siakam, could be, you never know what we're going to get. So that is kind of depressing. Thaddeus Young, 33 years old, his 6 points a game, he's gone down in half since last year. He might have just tipped over that, NBA age where you're now useless. Who knows? But the thing that makes me not so sad is I doubted Masai Ujiri earlier this year. And when on draft night, when he picked Scotty Barnes, it was one of those things. I didn't take 2 weeks off, but I certainly took 5 days off. I was despondent. I wouldn't leave the bed. My boyfriend had to go get me some ice cream. And, clearly I was wrong, and I was happy to be wrong. So I'm kind of questioning it a little bit, but I'm also you know what? It's Masai Ujiri. Outside of Bruno Caboclo, he hasn't really done anything wrong. So maybe, the other thing too that got me sad was this included Drew Eubanks or somebody. And I was I never heard of him, but maybe he's this great prospect. Yeah. I was well, there you go. So it's not even that. So it was it was a first rounder for Thaddeus Young. I don't understand. I don't understand.
I think because we're in the 6th seed currently, I think they're looking at this rebuild situation and saying we are ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
But there's only so much we can do this year. And I think that's a part of it. I am surprised that we didn't end up trading Malachi Flynn. I will say I really thought for sure Malachi was going to get traded. But he's going to be sitting on our bench for the rest of the season, and his dad's going to be bitching about it. And it'll end up on Reddit somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, it is confusing. But I think, I kept my expectations low for this team this year because it's a rebuild year, because we have Scotty Barnes and we're really rebuilding around a rookie. So I was okay, let's see what happens. I'm going to stand by the fact that I do think that this is about having some other mentorship for Achiuwa, maybe even for Barnes. I think it makes him the oldest player on the team. So it's like we're still a really young team. I think too, like the whole Kem Birch thing, like he's just been so in and out of the lineup that he's just another person in that spot that you can't fully rely on. So I think it was just, I don't know, when you have a player like Dragic and you're like, we got to do something, he isn't playing for us, you just don't have the same kind of leverage.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, we just weren't able to get as much as we maybe would have liked because we're not negotiating from a point of real leverage when it comes to Dragic because of the situation being what it is. So I do still trust in Masai. Even if this ends up being a bad move, it's not significant enough for me to stress about it too much. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how he fits in. Hopefully he can contribute really well. I mean, if he gets us over 10 points a game, I think that's pretty solid.
I like, before I wasn't being facetious at all. I actually was a fan of Thaddeus Young when he was on the 76ers. I just literally had never heard from him. But if I remember, like, he was actually a good player 8 years ago. And I know that sounds really mean to say, but like, I actually did like him 8 years ago. So maybe he has something left. I don't really know. I don't watch the Spurs because they're the world's most boring team. So he's just been in like this weird vacuum where he didn't exist for me for the past few years. But maybe, I don't know, maybe he's got something left that I'm not seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm hoping too. I think that's what we're all hoping for. And again, if it ends up being a bust, Dragic wasn't playing for us anyways. It is not too significant in the grand scheme of things. We didn't lose any of our top 6, 7, 8 players even. So I don't consider it that big of a loss, even if it ends up not being a great move. I think we were maybe overestimating how big of an asset Dragic really is or was. That could be it too. But anyway, sorry. Do you have anything else to say about it?
Oh no, because I think the reports are now that he's negotiating a buyout with the Spurs. So yeah, they didn't even want him. It was literally just for the pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we'll see. Like, I always trust the Raptors in the draft. I mean, I really trust them with anything. The Raptors Republic wrap-up pod did an amazing live today on YouTube. You can catch it. They went off for like an hour and a half. And I think they talked for an hour straight about this trade. So if anybody listening wants to hear more about that trade, like I watched it earlier today. I highly recommend it. Nobody told me to say that. It was just genuinely very good. Okay. It is time for a dying segment, but we're keeping it going anyway, called the Hot Girl Summer Nick Nurse Highlight of the Week. Now, there were actually, I missed doing our episode last week, so there's actually 2, although I've only gotten to 1. So Open Gym did an episode on Nick Nurse. I have not seen it. I am looking forward to it. I've just been a busy person. The other thing that people might not know is that the Arkells, I love how I'm doing this. Nobody cares, but I'm still doing this. I am clinging on. I don't care. The Arkells, Nick Nurse's BFFs and Canadian band from Hamilton, I think. They have a podcast now, and it's called the Best Hang Podcast. And Nick Nurse was a guest on this podcast because he's obsessed with being a celebrity. And they sang cover songs, and he plays guitar, he plays piano. They nerd out about music. He even sings. You can hear him sing if you want. So that's an interesting listen. If you're a Nick Nurse diehard, I definitely recommend it. Again, I'm not associated with that podcast. I'm not associated with the Arkells in any way, but it's like very, very candid stuff that you don't typically get to see from NBA people. So thought I would share. Vong, do you have a Nick Nurse highlight?
Nick
or
Nurse,
are you just so mad at him right now because he's playing our guys too many minutes?
I am a little bit mad at him for playing our guys too many minutes because I just feel like, I get it. We're trying to win.
Last night when it's like clearly a blowout and it's a back-to-back situation, it was especially like, okay, Nick.
I just feel like with a coach, if your only way to win is to like drive your guys into the ground in the regular season, like it's just, that's like, I'm one of the most anti like Tom Thibodeau people like ever because he just ruins young players' careers. Yeah. And I don't need our own version of Tom Thibodeau. Like if you're a good enough coach, you should be able to win without having 3 of the top 5 most minutes players in the entire league. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like, come on.
Or our front office should be doing more to bring in people that can help alleviate those minutes. I mean, I'm torn on the subject because on one hand, I completely agree with you. It is too many minutes and it's not sustainable. Let's just be real. It is not long-term sustainable. On the flip side, there is this part of me that appreciates him holding the bar high and keeping it there. And looking down at the bench and being like, if you are not at this level, you're not getting minutes. And I don't know, like I just think it's like it's not an easy spot to be in. And I see it from both sides. Like, I don't know how long we'll keep going like this. I mean, now that we're in the 6th seed, it's just like, okay, we're there. We're not even in the play-in right now. Like, I don't see an end to it, but that isn't good either. So I'm with you. I'm weary. I'm not a full defender of it, but I understand it. And, hopefully our guys are just young enough that they can handle it right now. They're not complaining about the minutes. I feel like if Fred felt like he needed a night off, he could say so, and we would give it to him. Like, I don't think we would deny them that. So, I don't know.
My worry for these types of teams and these types of coaches is generally what happens is they're the type of teams that overachieve in the regular season and then underachieve in the playoffs because they're basically playing playoff mode for the entire year, And I feel like as you develop, you have to have like that playoff mode. Like you can't just play in it all the time. You have to be able to flip it on and off a little bit when it matters. And if you're always in that mode the whole time, I do think it hurts development. And I would like to see more development because I feel like some of the people, I get it. Like, some of our bench hasn't been playing up to their potential. And this strategy did work with Chris Boucher. He was benched earlier, and then it sort of snapped him back into reality, and now he's back playing good. So, yeah, I get what you're saying about holding those high standards because it is forcing people to, play better to get on the court. But, yeah, I just don't want to see what happened to the Chicago Bulls happen to us. I don't want to be Thibodeau'd.
Right. No, I'm with you. I don't want to see that either. And hopefully we're not. I'm hoping this is temporary. But yeah, we have the same hopes and dreams here, Vong. Vong, that's been our episode. Thank you so much for joining me on this crazy, wild day where I had to postpone the recording just so I could read enough articles to form my opinions because there was so much news. Tell us what you're up to and where people can find you on the internets.
So my social medias are all at Vong Show. That's like Gong Show, but with a V. And upcoming in April, I have a comedy special coming out on Out TV. And then in May, I'm releasing a studio album that was filmed at the CBC prior to the pandemic. It's finally coming out, and it is titled Yellow Supremacist.
I absolutely love it. I can't wait to see those. And congratulations. That's so huge. I have also somehow finally recorded my comedy album, which will be out earlier in the spring. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at itsme_Cathryn, spelled Cathryn. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Take care. Bye.